The Onion is a satirical publishing organization, and although clearly fake news, their stories have been taken far too literal by far too many politicians and media outlets alike. Today, I'd like to cover 4 examples, one which I wrapped in another, to show just how gullible people truly are. FIFA frantically announces 2015 Summer World Cup in the United States. In 2015, Jack Warner, a member of the FIFA Exclusive Committee, was accused of various corruption charges, including wire fraud, racketeering, and money laundering. Warner was more than just part of the committee. He also owned Joe Public FC and stood as the Confederation of North, Central America, and Caribbean Association's football president since 1990, which held great power. But even dating back to the 1980s before his election, corruption was clear, with allegations dating back that would eventually return. 35 years later, in 2015, Warner was facing 8 criminal counts in the US, with his fate not looking too hot due to allegations of secretive wire transfers and bribery, with one allegation by the US government even claiming he had taken millions of dollars worth of bribes from South African officials to fix the voting for location of 2010 World Cup. After turning himself in, he was granted bond, but nothing stopped from there. And I should mention that 4 years prior to his 2015 legal troubles, he was already investigated and suspended from FIFA, which led to his resignation, and 4 years later, throughout the midst of the allegations, he was banned for life from football-related activities by FIFA. Now that you're caught up, where does the Onion play a role in all of this? Well, while trying to defend himself, he cited an article titled FIFA Frantically Announces 2015 Summer World Cup in the United States, digging him in a much deeper hole. Not only did he clearly not see who the article was published by, but he also must have not read past the title, as in the single paragraph piece, the end states, "At press time, the US national team was leading defending champions Germany in the World Cup opening match after being awarded 12 penalties in the game's first 3 minutes." Which I can't say for certain because I don't watch soccer, but that number seems unrealistic. In May of 2015, Warner was indicted by the United States Department of Justice, and his problems don't seem to have slowed down since, with the now 80-year-old still facing legal troubles from all angles. Planned Parenthood opens $8 billion abortion plex. In this clearly satirical article, The Onion describes an $8 billion abortion plex, with many luxuries that allow the organization to terminate unborn lives with the efficiency never before thought possible. The plex included a new state-of-the-art fetus-killing facility, and with their new slogan of "No life is sacred," the plex would be able to complete 1 million abortions every month, or 1 every 3 seconds. This is clearly a joking article, but we haven't even gotten to the craziest part yet. According to Planned Parenthood in the article, they want the abortion plex to become a regular part of women's lives, adding that they do their best to make the process not only quicker so there is no time for any second guessing, but also more of a social event. I was kind of on the fence in the beginning, 19-year-old Marcy Colrath said. But after a couple of margaritas and a ride down the lazy river they've got circling the place, I got caught up in the vibe. By the time it was over, I almost wish I could have aborted twins and gotten to stay a little longer. Even after seeing what we just read, Republican Congressman John Fleming somehow thought it was real. Once again, likely only reading the title. After whatever research I'm assuming he didn't do, he took to his Facebook page to repost the article with the caption, "More on Planned Parenthood, abortion by the wholesale." Even though the post has since been wiped from his page, screenshots show a commenter asking how he even got elected in the first place, which is a valid question. But unfortunately for that commenter, he was elected again in 2020 under the Trump administration, and he's on the ballot for the primary for Louisiana State Treasurer on October 14th, 2023. I should also mention that he was not the only person who was fooled by the article, but certainly the most prominent I found. Legal troubles. Before I move on to the last 2 stories, I'd like to take a second to discuss the Onion's legal defenses, or lack thereof, but there are some things I'd like to cover on these bases. For starters, in October of 2022, the Onion's head writer, Mike Gillis, submitted an amicus brief to the US Supreme Court. An amicus brief is otherwise known as an amicus curiae brief, and in Latin, it translates to friend of the court. Essentially, Mike Gillis was providing his input on an actual legal case. In this court case of Novick v. City of Parma, Anthony Novak was arrested for making a parody Facebook page of the local Parma, Ohio police in March of 2016. An example of the content posted on this page included a post by the supposed City of Parma Police Department in which they announced that because the city's homeless population was rising, they were going to introduce a limited 90-day law in which no food, money, or shelter donations towards any homeless people would be tolerated, with the hopes of lessening the homeless population through either leaving or starvation. If you violated the rule, you'd be sentenced to a minimum of 60 days in jail. Another hilarious example is where the parody account notified the community that between 12 p.m. and 9 p.m., anyone seen outside of their home would be arrested because of Family Day, where families unite to reduce future crime by having children have well-balanced communication with their families. Novak was charged with disrupting a public service, but 4 days later was set free. A year later, Novak sued the department, claiming retaliation against him because he used his First Amendment, freedom of speech. After all this went down, The Onion decided to defend Novak on his case of satire, saying that The Onion cannot stand idly by in the face of a ruling that threatens to disembowel a form of rhetoric that has existed for millennia, that is particularly potent in the realm of political debate, and that purely incidentally forms the basis of The Onion's writer's paycheck. Unfortunately for Anthony Novak and The Onion, the final decision of the court sided with the department, granting qualified immunity to the City of Parma, Ohio's officials. Aside from The Onion's defending Novak and Novak v. City of Parma, The Onion has had surprisingly few run-ins with the law. None I found, aside from one case entitled which they were nearly sued out of existence by Janet Jackson, after publishing an article titled "Dying Boy Gets His Wish" to pork Janet Jackson. And although the article seems to have been removed, no trouble seemingly came from the company aside from stress on their end, which was likely worth it in the end for them because of the free publicity they got. The main reasons why they haven't been sued to shreds is not only because their articles are clearly satire, but because of where they're located. The Hustler magazine v. Falwell decision held that the First and 14th Amendments to the United States Constitution provide protection against parodies of public people, especially those who aim to inflict emotional anguish. That might not sound great for The Onion, but in further research of the case, it states that speech in which no reasonable person expected to be true was protected free speech, and with The Onion's ridiculous headlines like "God answers prayers of paralyzed little boy," "No, says God," they seem safe, at least for now. Kim Jong-un, named The Onion's sexiest man alive for 2012. Referred to as the official newspaper of the Central Committee of the Chinese Communist Party, the People's Daily made a huge slip-up by taking an Onion article far too seriously. In November of 2012, The Onion published an article titled "Kim Jong-un, named The Onion's sexiest man alive for 2012. In the article, they refer to the Pyongyang-bred heartthrob as devastatingly handsome, with his round face, boyish charm, and strong, sturdy frame. Even though the article was clearly a joke, it becomes more of a joke when you scroll down to the page of the past winners, including Bernie Madoff from 2010 and Ted Kaczynski or the Unabomber from 2008. Although it has since been deleted, the People's Daily cited the Onion article and, in their own, included a 55-page slideshow of who they consider the sexiest man. It does seem like some other news sources also picked up on the story after the People's Daily, but regardless, it is crazy that the official newspaper of the Central Committee of the Chinese Communist Party that provides direct information on the policies and viewpoints of the CCP in multiple languages would do so little research before publishing an article. And this wasn't the only time something like this had happened, as Iran's semi-official Fars news agency published a story in 2012 claiming that a Gallup poll found that rural white Americans prefer Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad over President Barack Obama. Their information seemingly came directly from an Onion article published earlier that year, with the main standout from the two reporting incidents being that Iran's news agency took credit for their information, even going as far as restating an interview from the Onion's article where a fictional West Virginian resident, Dale Swidisky, says that he would rather go to a baseball game with the at the time Iranian president than the US president, because he takes national defense seriously, and he'd never let some gay protesters tell him how to run his country like Obama does. Back to the Kim Jong-un story, The Onion has since updated the bottom of their fictional article, mocking People's Daily, by saying that, for more coverage on The Onion's sexiest man alive 2012, Kim Jong-un, please visit our friends at the People's Daily in China, a proud communist subsidiary of The Onion Inc. Exemplary reportage, comrades.